We're here and it's happening again. I thought for a while, or a little while, we'll say a little while, at least before I started doing this, about the way that I wanted it to go, you know? I wanted it to go a certain way, and I didn't want it to go a certain other way, you know? It's understandable. Because if it goes a certain other way, then that feels less good than it feels if it goes the first certain way. You know? You get that. You want it to go this way and not that way. Because if it goes that way, that wouldn't be as good. I guess I'll get a little more specific about what I mean by the first and the second certain way, also known as this way and that way. This way entails much less struggle at the beginning to I need to put my gloves on, to create a flow. It entails not spending 60% of the time feeling like something's been done, or like feeling like I've gotten somewhere, or no, not spending 60% of the time trying to feel like I've gotten somewhere, you know? My apologies. And that way is just the inverse. That way would be, that way being the bad way, and the way it's gone before and the way we don't want it to go this time would be feeling like very critical of the way it's going and of who is responsible for that way, which is only me, you know? It's not that I don't want to feel responsibility for this, it's that I want those thoughts and judgments of relating this responsibility to be, ideally positive, right? But like, why do I want why do I want it to be the good way and not the bad way, you know? Like, why is the good way preferred? I've explained in some detail what I mean by the good and the bad way, and it might seem like with that detail, or even without it, it's a very obvious answer that of course you would want it to go the good way and not the bad way. And in my reaction is, of course, you know? I also think of course you'd want it to go that way. Why would you want it to go the bad way? You know? That wouldn't be good if it went the bad way. It would be bad. But if you try to get past that like jerk reaction of thinking that the obvious things are actually obvious, you'll realize they're not obvious, you know? The obvious things aren't obvious, and they never have been. They're not. They're only obvious if you don't like devote any energy to it. They're not obvious. Why would the good way be preferable to the bad way? And it's like one way of maybe approaching that question is like, well, let's sit down and let's define what we mean by good and bad, so we know that we're on an equal ground, we're on an equal playing field, and we have the same understanding of what good and bad means. And you would think that once you and the other party, and however many other parties are involved in this, came to the same understanding of what it means, what you mean by, you know, good and bad, as just like a concept, not even as like it is applied to one thing. If you come to somewhat of an understanding about that, which I think most people have like a similar understanding, you would think that then there would be no question as to why anyone would ever prefer good or over bad. You know, it would be questionable to question why you want good things instead of bad things, you know? Like, it's like, what are you doing questioning why you and everyone want good things? That's questionable in itself. It would be questionable to show any like association or affiliation with or desire for what are the bad things. And I was gonna say supposedly bad, but they're not only supposedly bad, they're actually bad, you know? We're speaking in terms of the actual, like, because we only talk about actual things here, you know? None of this is conceptual or just operating merely on like the plane of thought. Like, this is all actual. Like, why is it uncomfortable to have things be the bad way? And why does it seem like like you and I are complex enough to approach other things from multiple standpoints, and to feel inclined different ways about different things than maybe you were in the past, so you will be in the future, except for that which like is only evaluated on the scale of good to bad. When it's only evaluated on that scale, it's like there's never any reaffiliation, or there's never any doubt about. No one ever really says that they want bad things and really means it, you know? Sure, it's been said, but the only, you know, it's fair to assume that the only times it's been said are like, you know, a publicity stunt or an attention thing, or, you know, which are essentially what I'm doing right now. Me like at least pretending to question why we want good things instead of bad things is just another thing of like saying that which is like unsaid in order for that to be like, for the allure to be there, you know, for the allure to be in nothing more than me just saying that which is like not a controversial opinion, because it isn't really, you know, it doesn't have any real merit or effect, but an opinion that is like not taken by anyone, including myself, or thought of by anyone, not including myself. But even after that admission, I'm still going to continue playing that game in pushing this agenda of the question of why it is that we prefer good things, you know? What's so good about the good things? And conversely, what's so bad about the bad things, you know? The heck is so bad about the bad things? There's nothing bad about them. They're only bad to the extent that the good things are good. What would it be like if we all started to prefer bad things, you know? What if bad things became the new fad? Like, what if bad things became like the favorite? What would that be like? Would that, I mean, one boring answer is that would just flip. That would just actually cause nothing to happen, because it would just it would just flip the bad things and the good things around. So then, like, what once were bad things now have the label as good, and what once was good now the label is bad. But I think that's the boring answer. That is like, that leads to like a straight, a very straight and like concrete wall. That is, it's not much fun, you know. It's like you'd rather jump on like a bouncy floor, or like a bouncy house or a trampoline. You'd rather jump on that than a concrete wall. And why? But why would you? Obviously the answer is because the bouncy floor and the trampoline is good, and the concrete wall is one of the bad things, you know. So you actually have to look. You have to look no further. And to look no further, or to look any further to find an answer to one of those questions, is like, that would just be, you're just being a phony, you know? You know the answer, and you know that the answer is because this is good and that other thing is bad. You know? You don't have to pretend to, like, philosophize about it. There's nothing to philosophize about. There really isn't. But, you know, now I'm like, wait a second. What about the things that are in between? Huh? What about that? What about those things? What about the things that are in between good and bad? Are we forgetting about those? What about the things that, if you took 1 million people, there'd be pretty much a 50-50 split on their opinions on whether this certain sample thing is good or whether it's bad? What about those things? Am I just gonna disregard them because they don't fit into my catchy little spin, you know? They don't fit into my little opener. I'm not forgetting about those things. I remember them. I remember them the whole time. In fact, I was thinking about those things. I was thinking about those things the entire time that I was not talking about them, you know? Which may seem like the biggest fabrication in history. If I was really thinking about them that whole time, then how come I didn't even talk about them? You know? How are you gonna think about something and not talk about it? That's, especially when it's like, there are people who are counting on you, you know? They're counting on you for a certain level of transparency, and you're completely violating that trust by not talking about what you're thinking about. That's like, that should be one of the, you know, that's like one of the things you shouldn't do. And to that accusation, I would take some time, I would think about it, and I would calmly and with you know, a very like composed conduction of my demeanor, I would say to you, or I would say to the accuser, or the accusator, or the accusationalist, that I understand why you think it may be wrong of me to not talk about what I'm thinking about, but I'll tell you why it's not wrong. And that why is that it's informing what I'm talking about, you know? It isn't having no effect. Just because I'm not talking about it directly doesn't mean it's not, you know, doesn't mean it's not playing a part. That's what I say. And then the judge buys that, and so does the jury, you know? The judge and the jury, they both buy that, and they let me off free of all charges. All charges of fraudulence have been wiped from my record because I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fraud. It's the next guy who's a fraud, you know? It's not me. And it never has been me, you know? I was never the fraud. But now that I've been absolved of all legal troubles, I think it would make the most sense to swiftly retract myself towards what I was trying to get at originally. That would make the most sense. And what I was trying to get at is how come the good things are so good and how come the bad things are so bad, and how come we only want the good things, you know? What makes them so good? And it may seem like I'm phrasing it in a way that's like I'm just about to give the answer, you know? Like I'm really, really close to telling you the answer as to why the good things are so good and why we only want them. But I'm not, you know? And that's also another, you know, it'd be predictable for me to say I don't have the answer. I don't know. Maybe I do have the answer, you know? I'm not gonna just say I don't have the answer and that will be that. Maybe I do, but I don't have it right now. What's so bad about the bad stuff, you know? I mean, I say that, but I know what's so bad about it, you know? But then it's like I have this, like, there's something within this character and within even my non-characterized self that is like, it's never satisfied with, like, you know, the end point. It's never satisfied with me telling myself or me telling it that, you know, this is how it is. Even within myself, I can't be like, this is how it is and this is the way it works. It's like it's you know, it kind of like it wriggles against that. It wiggles out of that grip, you know? It doesn't, it's like, it's not complacent, you know? It isn't complacent with just being told that, like, well, this is the function of this operative of yourself, and this is why it functions that way. It's not gonna take that. It doesn't buy that, you know? It doesn't buy that. And that's also not to say that there's another certain way that it believes that, you know, that it would buy or that it would believe, because there isn't that either, you know? There isn't any certain way that this mini self would feel okay with. There's no way, you know? And that's why like, even when you take the things, you know what it does? The mini self, at least in my case, it loves attacking the things that we don't actually, like, give any mind to, give any attention to. So then when you feel that structure being attacked, you're like, hey, what the heck? You know, like, what the heck? I haven't spent any energy or effort recently or in the past at all building this part of myself that you're attacking up. I haven't I haven't worked in it. Why don't you attack the main castle, you know? Mini self, why don't you attack the main castle? But like, that's not what it wants to do. It wants to attack the little huts. The little huts out in the field. That are set up to house, you know, one man for 2 days at a time. That's its favorite thing to attack. And, you know, I mean, I don't know all of the names to these huts, but I've heard anecdotes. Like, one of the names of the huts that it's kind of attacked mercilessly for a long time now is it's called weight. And it's weight as in like matter, you know? WEIGHT. That's the favorite hut that it attacks. And the way it does it is when the big self is, you know, doing normal, predictable, practical work and not thinking about it too much, you know? Not questioning it, not going through any suffering, like wondering like, hey, what, like, you know, how much reality is there to all these frameworks that we're upholding in order to perform this practical task. It's not even thinking about any of that. All it's thinking about is to move this heavy ass box of books from the attic upstairs to the truck outside, you know? But you know, right as you're halfway, you know, there's 3 flights of stairs and you're just about done with 1.5 of them. The mini self comes in and it attacks the hut, you know? And it says, hey, what do you mean this weight? What is this weight that you're struggling with? There is no weight, you know? Or what the hell is this weight? I don't get it. And sometimes, you know, it's not always like, it doesn't always have like a antagonistic disposition. It isn't always like telling you with confidence that things are the opposite of the way you believe them. Sometimes it's just like an innocent questioner of these things. Sometimes it just questions these things for you, and it doesn't mean any harm by it. Sometimes it does mean harm by it, but there are times when it's like, it's just telling you how it really thinks that it is, or it's telling you, or other times it's asking you. Its innocent self, you know, it might form the observation in the form of a question rather than like an aggressive statement telling you how it is. It'll be like, but why, like, it'll say something like, why is that heavy though, you know? I don't get what is it about that makes that box of books heavy? I don't get it. Says the mini self, you know? The mini self doesn't get it. It wants to know what's so heavy about that box of books, you know? What's so damn heavy about that? And the real reason why this is worth mentioning it's worth mentioning because the big self never has an answer. Never. You know, unlike the variety of the ways in which the mini self posits the question, there is no variety in the big self's answer, you know? The big self is always like, I don't know. First it feels a little attacked, then the second time it says I don't know, it's like I don't know, you know? It's like it's pondering it a little bit. And then the third I don't know becomes depressive at the realization that it in no way is it's nowhere close to coming up with an answer as to why that box of books is heavy. And it also, like, it's the big self is smart enough to understand that it never will be there, or it never even will be any closer to understanding why that box of books is heavy. And something it's tried, you know, multiple times, very valiant effort, is to respond with, it just is, you know? It just is heavy. But that might satisfy some other selves. Maybe the medium-sized self would be satisfied by that. But the mini self, surprisingly enough, just is never satisfied by that. But that's not to say that there's something wrong in that answer that is leading to the dissatisfaction of it. There's nothing wrong with the answer. It's just that the mini self will never be satisfied with any answer that the big self gives, you know? Never. No matter how hard, like, the big self tries to communicate in alien terms why that box of books is so darn heavy, it doesn't matter, you know? He can transcribe it to whatever approach he wishes, or it wishes, and it won't like, I mean, it won't cause any harm, but it won't have the desired effect in getting the mini self to hop off the tie horse and stop questioning why the box of books is so heavy. You know, the only time, and this is just all, you know, this is just what I know from a story that is, you know, in ongoing development. Like, it's still, this isn't over yet, you know? Like, it's still going on. But from what I know, the only time that the mini self, you know, stops being so obsessive about, you know, finding the answer to this one annoying, like, pesky kind of alien question about, you know, for example, why the box of books is so big, is when it finds another one to sink its teeth into, you know? It finds another one to sink its teeth into. Like, it goes and it switches from that because you know, while the big self is trying his best to bring this darn hecking box of books downstairs, the mini self is it feels the pain, and not the metaphorical or mental pain, the physical pain that's caused when you know, when the real life human physical leg, the shin specifically, hits itself against the doorway, and it feels that pain. And the big self reacts in a normal way. You know, it cusses and it says, "Ow, that hurt," you know? That hurt. There's no, and then it clarifies to his buddy, it's like a physical pain, because these days all you know, the majority of pain that's referenced is like some elusive mental pain. This is like straight up the pain of slamming your shin into the doorway, the sharp edge of the doorway. And it says that hurt. And then the mini self, you know, it's tearing up the shed that is weight, and it switches over to the pain shed. And oh my god. And the pain shed is where it does the most damage, you know? Because the weight shed, you know, it lived to tell another day. The pain shed heard a cry, or the mini self heard a cry, and it left the weight shed, and it fled as fast as it could to get to the pain shed. And that's where it didn't leave, you know? And it's just like, it just kept asking, why the heck did that even hurt? You know? What about that hurt so bad? And now, I mean, that's the way the story goes. Now I'm gonna like, you know, zoom out a little bit and speak from my own voice. And I will say, this is like, it becomes less stupid the more you really think about it. It starts off like, what the hell, you know, what the hell is this? Like, what do you mean wide is hitting your wide is hitting your shin against the jagged doorway? Of course that was hurt. What do you mean why does that hurt? But it's like, the more you think about it, the more you're like, I don't get it. And what we're looking for also isn't a like a physiological answer. Like, I don't mean why does it hurt coming over from a place of just not knowing like the existent knowledge about, like, you know, pain receptors in the body and the way that pain acts as like a conduit for security for each human. Like, come on, we're beyond that, you know? That's not what we mean. We know those things. I mean, even if we don't know those answers are like readily and easily available to any one of us for free. There's nothing to get at there. I guess it's like, but it also, if you interpret that question as me kind of desperately seeking the physiological answer for why pain hurts, that's a completely valid reaction to it, because I'm trying to form this, like, this thing into these words, and like in hopes that me or whoever like ever watches this will be able to kind of read between the lines and pick up on maybe like the subtleties that I'm like consciously and subconsciously trying to place in the words, like relating to the meaning. You know, I'm hoping that some of that will get through. That's why I try to, I instead of saying there's no way to put it, or how could I ever express this, I try to just express it in like ostensibly plain and boring ways, with the hopes that it will be recognized that that's not all I mean, you know? I mean more than that. There's more to it. There's more to it than that, you know? Yeah, it's really, it's a problem. And now I'm gonna, and it's not a problem, of course. There are no problems. We're problem free. I'm gonna like zoom out even further, and because I don't want to have to go to trial again for on the conviction of not saying what I think. because you gotta say what you think, you know. So for the past several minutes, I've been like wondering if I want to continue this mode of relating to the video and to the listener and the speaker and everything, or if I want to like try to achieve more transparency with it, where there will be less reading between the lines required, and thus like the chances of it being misinterpreted are like drastically reduced, you know, if you don't have to read between the lines 24/7. And I think I don't know, I think maybe because I found that like when I was giving that like character, that story, it felt on one hand thrilling in the sense that like this is some I don't know how to say it, but it's like I don't know. I felt thrilling in the sense that like this is like a form of expression that I'm like I feel proud to be using, and I don't think it's used all that much, so I feel like a little like proud in that sense. But on the other token, it was like that kind of thrill, that like creative thrill that I got from that was in the same breath, like counterbalanced by the kind of like suffocating, depressing disposition that I was like exuding constantly, you know, in a very like, you could argue in a very contrived way. Maybe not, I don't know, maybe not contrived though. And so that was like bothering me in the sense that it left me feeling like not as like abundant or happy as I could be during this experience. But also like I've yet to feel that kind of ultimate abundance and happiness that I sometimes feel otherwise. I've yet to feel that while doing something like this. That's not to say it's been the opposite, but it's like I think I focus a lot of my energy on like keeping this up rather than just, you know, being able to like passively relax and enjoy your temporary good mood. And you know, like the fact that my feeling a little depressed by this disposition is something that prompted me to stop engaging in that disposition. That speaks again to like the whole theme of like well-being and happiness and satisfaction being like the most important thing that like we can't help but like seek, you know? Like you can't help but seek like feeling good, you know? It wouldn't be natural to be okay feeling bad, cause feeling bad is bad. It's so strange. It really is. It's strange. But it's also like, it's like, okay, like what am I trying to say, you know? Why can't we just accept the fact that like, yes, we try to feel good and we try to avoid feeling bad. Why can't we just accept that and move on to stuff that's like, that seems more to have more depth and more meaning and like more mystery to it, you know? Like there's no mystery to the fact that like we chase good feelings and good things and not the other way around. But it's like, but yes, there is mystery to it, you know? There isn't no mystery to anything. Like there's nothing that isn't mysterious. I really don't think. And even you could be like, well, I mean, to some extent, but it's like not even to some extent. It's not like there are certain things that are like concretely extremely mysterious and certain things that are like concretely like very, very, very slightly mysterious in relation. It's like the extent to which those things are mysterious can just be inflated or deflated by the way like you're looking at it. It's all mysterious and none of it is, you know? None of it's mysterious. It's all so mysterious. It's like, even to say that I really feel this way is like, that's too, wouldn't that be too like convicted and confident in the totality of a very temporarily like of wouldn't that be too confident in the totality of like a thought or a statement that's spawned by such a temporary state of mind, you know? It's like when you start like looking at it, it's like you'll realize or maybe you won't, I don't know, but in my experience, like you start looking at it, you realize how like how flimsy all these things that like you conclude are, you know? And you're kind of like in your like perpetual swinging on the pendulum of the suffering to happiness scale. Like you'll realize how like ungraspable or flimsy these like conclusions you make, like these even just about like people or about like the way that like a certain person is. It's like it really feels like, in my experience, as soon as I've like made a conclusion about that, like I'm faced with at least some evidence of the opposite existing, you know? It's like, no, there's also this too. And then so I kind of like frantically run over and I try to align myself with this novel counterpoint, or this novel like opposite that also exists. And then as soon as I'm done setting up camp over there, you know, that the cool spot becomes the other side again. I don't know, but it's like, oh, I don't know, man. I guess I'm gonna continue talking about the way that I'm actively thinking about this, like kind of above what I'm saying, you know? The whole thing about like being guilty or being not guilty of thinking things that I'm not saying is like based on like something that's really going on. Is like, I think I have this like natural need for me to be feeling good about this video, even as it's ongoing. But in order for me to be feeling good about it, I need to kind of shove myself into like a box of understanding, of like, I need to shove myself into a box of like that is made up of all these parts, which themselves are made up of the ideas that like all these ideas are like have solidity to them and have meaning to them. So in order to feel happiness or satisfaction with this creation, I have to kind of reduce like the scope with which I think about it And the alternative is to not be in a box and to be able to think kind of limitlessly and not with such a low ceiling. But then when I do that, I feel negative about this creation, you know? Like, I feel like this thing can't be worthwhile if I'm really operating on like a certain level of thinking about things. It's like I have to kind of shrink it down for this to be worthwhile. But then maybe it's the case that in my being like allegedly or ostensibly transparent about that, maybe I'm breaking that kind of duality of like, either I shrink myself down and I feel okay, or I let myself sprawl out and I don't feel okay. Maybe I'm introducing a third option to this kind of pendulum that only seemed to swing two ways. And that third option is that I feel like I'm operating on like the most sophisticated way of thinking that I'm capable of, that I'm as of yet capable of, but I'm still talking about and creating something that doesn't like fail, that doesn't fail to line up with that sophistication. And this could be me just trying to will that existence of a third direction that the pendulum swings into existence. But I kind of feel like that's the case, you know? I think the way to do this is like, whatever's nagging at you and whatever's telling you this isn't good or anything, just like drag that from the back of your head. Even if it doesn't want to come out, just drag it and pull it right to the front. Pull it all the way to the point where it's in the processing bay, and then right after it's in the processing bay, it gets checked and it gets shipped out into your mouth, and then you say it, and then it's in the real world, you know? Then it's not just bothering you from within. It's like you feel a sense of like superiority over that thought if you vocalize it, you know? Because it's like you're putting it into your zone, you know? Like that intrusive or that kind of like lingering anxious thought it's only comfortable, you know, fucking shit up in the back of your head. It's not comfortable when you pull it up into the forefront, especially not when you like go so far as to like say something about it. Like, Jesus Christ, that's one way to make it uncomfortable, like easily, you know? And this, I guess that's how, I mean, that's maybe a strategy of dismantling thoughts like that. Just talk about them, you know? Don't let them, if you let them just eat you up from the back, it's like that's what they want. You're giving them what they want, you know? Be so for real. Be so for real. Say exactly how it is, you know? I think another thing that like may bother me when I start doing videos like this is like I'm kind of forced to like to admit to the complexity and the like multi-sidedness of the way that like shit is, you know? Whereas when I'm not doing this, it's much easier to like, maybe I don't think I even know that I'm doing this, but I think I am. I think I do this. It's much easier to cling to this kind of like fantastical bubble of like I have things like under control, and I'm generating more happiness than ever, you know? Like, and that's not to say that I'm trying to like undermine that, because that sounds terrible. It sounds like I'm trying to tell myself that that's not something I can realistically have, or that I'm deceiving myself if I feel like I do. But it's just that, like, it just isn't, I don't know. It's much easier to make these kind of like flat, one-dimensional conclusions that even at the time I probably know are flat and one-dimensional. It's much easier to make those like when I'm not in circumstances which prompt me to like talk about everything. Normally I don't have to pull these unconscious thoughts that are affecting my conscious self. I don't normally have to pull them into the forefront of my brain. Not to mention, I don't normally have to vocalize them, which is that's like going all the way, you know? That's like going all the way and like putting them out on the table and being like, everyone look at this guy. And so like, that's a performance where if that kind of thought is kind of eating away at you from the unconscious part of your head, it's a good thing to pull it to the front and just kind of, you know, just chop it up with your little cutting knife. Only cutting knives are allowed, not non-cutting knives. But you know, conversely, if you have kind of like a cushion of like identity, or of like, you know, something you know, consciously or not, you like a thought that you consciously or not rely on to feel okay with like the way that things are. If you have one of those, that also might feel a little uncomfy with itself being like yanked from its sanctuary and kind of brought out onto the table and examined and scrutinized just the same. And then you might, you know, as you're kind of carelessly yanking out all these thoughts and put them onto the table and looking at them, you might feel the effect of their absence. You might be like, damn, like, I wish I still had that cushion. And you might ask the guy, hey, can we bring that cushion back? Are we done looking at it yet? You know, and he'll be like, well, we're still running through the second round of inspection, so no, we can't bring the cushion back, but we'll be back soon, sir. And you say, okay, thank you. And then later in that day, you go back and you pick your cushion up, and you're so grateful to have it back in one piece, and it works just the same. But as you're turning to leave the repair shop, the guy says to you, he says, sir, you're forgetting this guy. And you turn around kind of in shock, because you already forgot about him. Because you already forgot about this guy. You turn around in shock and you see he's holding up that damn cockroach that used to live in the back of your head and affect the way that you felt and thought about things. And you know what he says? He says, you can't have the cushion without the cockroach. And on the outside you laugh and you say, oh, you're right, sir, I'm sorry, I forgot. But on the inside you're torn up, because you had resigned yourself to life without the cockroach, and then you realized you needed to have the cushion. You need the cockroach to have the cushion. Oh, What's your cushion? And what's your cockroach? You're cushions. But like, what would it be like if you could have the cushion without the cockroach, you know? What's the answer? Pause the video and think about it. You know, I think that the most boring, uninspired answer might actually be the reality here, and that is that if it were possible for anyone to have the cushion without the cockroach, I don't think the cushion would have the same cushiony effect, you know? Maybe that's a stretch. I don't think it is. I don't think it's a stretch, and I don't know why do I like pretend to harbor some humility in me like by pretending to question if it's a stretch or not. I know it's not a stretch, you know? Why am I pretending? It's not a stretch, you know? If you didn't have the cockroach, the cushion wouldn't be as cushiony at all. It wouldn't be nearly as cushiony. It's not to say that there aren't any stretches, but this is, oh boy, this is not one of them, you know? Now we're going a little bit uphill, and we can make a very easy and fun connection and allusion to what was just going on by saying walking uphill is like the cockroach, and walking downhill is just like you guessed it, it's just like the cushion. So like I kind of broke, without really thinking about it, I kind of broke into my second story of this thing, and that time it felt a lot better that time. But I'm interested in, I guess, two things. I'm interested in how come I kind of broke into that story after saying that it feels better to be just myself without any persona or facade or character, you know? How come 5 or 10 minutes later I broke into another one? And no, I don't think it's like it represents my inability to keep to my word. I think that just felt like the best thing at like right then, and I still think it was, you know? It's like your mind's assessment of right and wrong, and it's just like natural, kind of unquestionable, instinctive evaluation of like what it should be doing. It operates light years ahead of whatever questioning you think you're like sharing to, like, you know, you're sharing out loud, you know? So it's like when you realize that, it really is no surprise that it's no surprise that like I broke into another story and I'm like, oh, why did that feel so good? Like, the brain is the babysitter of the vocal cords, you know? It keeps it in check. It makes sure that the vocal cords, like, and just, I guess I could say the voice, it never gets ahead of the brain, ever. It's always the other way around. I mean, I think, and now anything I say that I think is gonna be kind of like muddied a little bit by my admission that like my words don't really stand up to the operations of they don't really live up to that standard of that is set by the operatives of my brain, you know. I'm constantly going to be thinking that now, and thinking that you're thinking that, and so on. But it's like, wary of all that, I'm still going to say that I think part of why the second kind of story felt a little better and a little bit less depressing and a little more true or more stimulating is because I mean I physically sat and was just like I pulled the cockroaches out of my head, you know, because here's the thing with the cockroaches, they don't live long, but they're constantly having kids, you know. So I mean, I guess this is one, you know, the brain would just kind of laugh at me if I said something so elementary, but one way to think about it is that each cockroach is like assigned to a thought that is like, you know, subconsciously it's like affecting the way you behave and the way you do things and the way you think also, but it doesn't stay alive forever. It has kids, and so over time that thought, over generations of cockroaches, the thought they're assigned to is like, it's morphing a little bit, you know. It's not the same thought as it was half an hour ago. And that is to say that I forgot what that was to say. But I do still believe in the validity of that last thing, that last point. I guess it was like I made that point with regards to, like, you know, just the housekeeping of your head. It's like you pull the cockroach out, even if you just pulled it out half an hour ago, like I was trying to demonstrate, it's not the same cockroach, you know. There's this new guy who has a slightly more evolved way of affecting the way you think, and you know, from their perspective or from yours, there might be, you know, pros and cons to that evolution, but it's still an evolution nonetheless. So it's like you can't get complacent. You can't let the cockroaches pile up, you know, because they're gonna keep having kids no matter what. You got to keep yanking them out and putting them on the table and doing a little snip sip. Then then you can kind of control the how many of them are like created and kind of dominating the back of your head. Don't dominate the back of my head. And you know, I feel grateful to be at a point where, like, I'm very, very conscious and aware of these happenings, because if I weren't, they would just be building up and kind of just fucking shit up from the back of my head. This whole colony of cockroaches, and this little cushion that I have. You know, you can buy a bigger cushion, but it's like the cushion isn't reproducing. It isn't going to naturally multiply or upgrade itself. It's like you gotta do that, you know. But even having like reached what I at least like to think is a pretty high level of transparency, I still feel I feel closer to good than bad, you know? And you know, here's one thing that I would say personally, in my personal opinion, it feels better to feel good than to feel bad. That's what I would say. That's just personally though. And that is to say, don't worry if you think it would feel better to feel bad than good. That's completely valid too. That makes perfect sense, you know? And it isn't without envy that I regard your tendency to feel better feeling bad than good, you know? Don't think it's without envy, because it's not. It isn't without envy, in fact. That is to say, I'm envious that you are someone who is able to feel better feeling bad than feeling good. It's like you have invested in a cushion that essentially is alive and has the ability to ability to reproduce, and not just reproduce but also like evolve. Not over millions of years, but very quickly. Like, you'll notice the evolution. You know, this cushion's great grandfather was nowhere near as evolved as this here cushion is. And I'm envious that you, as a person who is able to feel better feeling bad than good, is have access to such cushions, because I don't yet, you know. My cushions, they don't reproduce, and the cockroaches do, but the cushions are just, they're very nice and they do their job, but they're not evolving for me. But still, it's like I still feel okay. I still feel okay and normal and good too. And I guess a perfect kind of last thing to remark is that I feel good feeling good.